Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mike Yarenworth, signing on to the Sign Off. It's the podcast where we tell you all the things you didn't know you wished you knew about the world of sports marketing. We have been blessed with guests so far on this podcast. We've had Daryl Sittler, we had Rocket, and today's guest is no exception. You know him and love him with his time with Sportsnet. His name is Ken Reid, but did you know about his love for trading cards? That's what we're going to sit down with him and find out. We go in and out of that concept, and we end up talking about the time that we spent with him writing Eddie Shack's biography, and we even get into NFTs. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what NFTs are, I highly suggest that you give this one a listen. We do our best to explain the concept behind them, our intentions in entering that market, and sort of the world's perception, right or wrong, of what they represent. You need to bear with us on this episode. It was such a shame. We had such a great interview. We all felt great after it, only to realize there were some slight audio issues with the recording, a little bit of clicking and a little bit of buzzing. We did our best to remove it, but you will notice some of that, especially in the early goings. Hopefully it's not too much to deter you, because I can promise you that inside this interview, there is a ton that you are not going to want to miss. Ken Reid, what can I say? He's born to talk, and he does a great job at that over the course of the 45 minutes or so we spend with him. So without further delay, we're going to cut to him, and we will see you guys on the other side. And welcome back to the Sign Off. We're here once again. An episode that I've been very excited for. Obviously, you would have heard this in the introduction, but we're joined by a very special guest, someone who's been near and dear to the hearts of Frameworth for quite a while. We've been together in quite a few projects that we've been working on. We're here with Ken Reid of Sportsnet, recent inductee into the Whitby Hall of Fame, 2021 member.
No, not the Whitby. I was their guest speaker.
Oh, you were their guest speaker.
But I am a member of the Pictou County Sports Hall of Fame.
I was going to say, because you're from Pictou County. When were you inducted into the Pictou Hall of Fame?
Pictou County Sports Hall of Fame, I think it was 2019, pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic, the world was a different place. Pictou? So I actually have, I've been accused, Pictou County is in Nova Scotia. Oh, okay. I have a sort of history with that place.
Sorry, Troy and Trina.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half from Cole Harbour.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I always get accused from my friends out there for saying it wrong. How is my pronunciation? Pictou County.
That's good.
That's good?
Except if you're from Pictou County, it's Pick County.
Yeah, that's what I feel like I had too many consonants and too many vowels in that when I said
where
that.
Are you from? Pictou County. Where are you from? Cole Harbour. Let's go then, bud. That kind of thing.
You're bringing me back to my university days. Yeah. Also joined, obviously, by Brian Airworth, president of Frameworth. I'm excited to get into this.
You don't say dad?
Okay, so
no,
let me get his opinion. Okay, so Ken, I respect everything you do on Sportsnet. I think you have a great energy, a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
I started this off in the interview with Daryl Sittler. I called him dad or daddy, and then I told Daryl, like, I'll try to avoid calling him dad or daddy.
Yeah.
After the episode, he approached me and said, "You gotta stop doing that. Well, you can't call me dad on the podcast."
Well,
dad's okay. Daddy sounds goofy.
A little, yeah. In the words of so I get a lot of my broadcasting acumen from one of the greatest managers in the history of the WWF, then Slick,
okay,
the master of style, who said honesty is the best policy. Mm-hmm. So you just go with what's right. So it's dad or it's Brian, whatever you call the old man at home or at work, you know. Okay. Mr. Aaronworth.
Yeah, he makes me call him sir at home, so I guess that's what I'm going to be calling you from now on. One of the reasons why I'm actually so excited for this episode is because working in sports memorabilia for as long as we have, we get asked all the time about trading cards. Mm-hmm. Now, it may not be apparent to people who are just fans of, collecting autographs, cards, whatever it is, that those are kind of two different industries, very specific industries. Mm-hmm. So at Frameworth, our experience with trading cards is almost nil. We don't know a ton about it apart from the fact that, Wayne Gretzky's rookie card is worth quite a bit. Right. You are the opposite. You have a ton of experience. You've written 2 books, literally written the book on trading cards.
Yeah.
Hockey card stories. Yeah. And that's and so there's 2 of those, and you've been collecting your entire life. Mm-hmm. I want to sort of talk about that to get your perspective. I kind of want to treat this as like a learning opportunity for ourselves.
Okay.
And what I want to start with is just a couple questions about your perception of collecting cards. Did you start collecting cards more as just something fun to do? Was there ever an intention of collecting, amassing a fortune through these things? Mm-hmm. Maybe not exactly as a kid, but eventually, did you know that you had something valuable with it, or was that never the goal with you?
Yeah, so I was like a lot of other kids in the 1980s, right? You just bought a pack.
Right.
They were 25 cent pack of O-Peachy. So, I mean, I specifically remember going to the Hector Arena where I grew up in Pictou, and you'd go to Friday night skating, you'd pay $1 to get in, you'd buy a couple, they were these football-shaped bubble gums that were hard as rock at the canteen, and you could literally snap them like this. Then you'd buy a few packs of hockey cards, we'd open them, we'd chew the gum in those, we might trade during skating. The next night you'd go to the Pictou Mariners Junior C game, you'd pay $1 to get in, you'd buy a program for 50 cents, you'd buy 2 more packs of cards. And I loved the cards because for me, growing up in a place that was 12 hours from the nearest hockey team, which was Montreal, and that was if you were speeding on the drive, you were a long way away from the NHL, and you only saw the NHL. That was back in the old one game one night a week of the Hockey Night in Canada days. So for me, as a hockey freak, I wanted to know as much about hockey as I could. So we'd get Hockey Digest, the Hockey News, and I'd buy the cards and I'd devour everything on card, and I'd flip over the back and I'd read everything on the back. And as I got older, I'd hear about a guy playing in the NHL, and I'd say he didn't play in the NHL, he didn't have a card.
Oh.
But I didn't realize that not everybody had a card back
Oh,
then, right?
interesting.
The sets were smaller. So then as I got a little bit older, I remember my mom brought back a price guide from spring training in 1987, and I discovered that baseball cards were actually worth money.
Oh,
right?
okay.
That Roger Clemens 85 I had was worth $15. That blew my mind. So light switch went on. I became this
$80.
no, like $15 in 1985.
Oh, I was going to say inflation.
So I went from kid that just collected cards to wow, these are worth something. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I just started hoarding everything, and then by the time 1990 rolls around, there's the card boom hits. There's giant shows in Halifax with 200 tables, and there's all these old men dealers, and then there's me and my brother and a couple buddies that are selling our doubles, and we're walking.
Oh, so you'd get a spot there?
Oh yeah, I'd rent a table. I mean, my buddies would be working at McDonald's or Sobeys, and I would sell cards. I'd do a couple shows a year. My name would be in the program. My brother and I had our own business cards that my mom made, and I'd like if you're 15, 16 years old and you spend all day at a card show and you buy a bunch of cards and sell your doubles and you walk out with $800, that's a good day.
That's not bad.
Big time.
Yeah, that's a big day. So then I kept collecting. Then I went away to college, and I discovered girls.
Oh,
so then,
right.
So talking to somebody about your 1990, I don't know, Owen Nolan rookie wasn't a good way to. It was a good bar conversation in college.
That's got to be my problem.
Right.
That's why I'm 32 and single.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
So collecting went away until I basically moved here to Toronto 11 years ago, and I got the bug again because I moved a lot of my stuff that was back at my dad's back here, and I just got back into cards again, and now the boom is back. It's
back.
like 1990 all over again.
It's like a gold rush. Now, I've heard you say that you, and this could have been from a couple of years ago, that you have over 50,000 cards in your collection.
Yeah.
Has it grown to more than that?
I have a very unhappy wife, so it's around there. It's
Sure that has anything to do with the cards?
Does your wife have any interest in the cards themselves, or does she just put up with it?
She puts up with it.
Okay,
She's
fair.
nice. So our linen closet's full of cards. But I'd say around 50,000. Yeah, and there's still a bunch back home in Nova Scotia that I got a truck up here.
Now, what would your split between you've kind of talked? I've read a couple of your articles about common cards, or what people sort of call common cards, and there's a big difference between those cards and what would end up fetching a lot of money. And you actually have a large affinity, you said, towards the common cards.
Yeah, I like the stuff people consider junk.
Yeah, and is that more because it's like a snapshot of a bygone era, or are you still into the stats, still into collecting everything?
I think the snapshot of a bygone era. I'm a hockey romantic, so I like looking back at guys with their mullets, and I look around.
Yeah.
I look around this room, and I'm attracted to the Bobby Orr picture, and like
For sure.
You know how Bobby looked back in the day,
Yeah.
And I'll look at any card from the 60s or 70s, and it takes me back there, and the cards from the 80s that aren't worth much takes me back to when I was a kid.
Yeah. And all your doubles that you would have had. I'm sure that you. So of your 50,000, how many of those would be doubles, or have you?
Oh, great question. That's an interesting question.
And I want an exact number.
Yeah, I'd say probably a 70-30 split, maybe, something like that.
That's not bad at all.
Funny. Just recently, we uncovered during our inventory, uncovered boxes and boxes and boxes of cards that had still the cellophane on them, so they were not touched. And we didn't do a lot in cards, as you mentioned, but from time to time we'd get them and break them down and put them in our frames.
Right.
To enhance the frame. So if it was, the Tall Boys are famous cards that came out in the 60s. We had sets of those, and we'd put them around a picture of Johnny Bauer autograph just to make a nice piece of wall decor. But after a while, they stopped selling. So we ended up just putting the boxes aside, and we uncovered them. So I'm thinking now I'm reading all about how this card market has gone through the roof, and I'm hearing Wayne Gretzky's this is sold for hundreds of thousands and whatever it was. So I'm thinking we must have a gold mine here. So I call Ken up and I say, Ken, one thing about this business that I've pretty much found out is it's not the most ethical business in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Want to buy a watch.
Right. Yeah.
You would never leave your collection with somebody and ask them to assess it because the good cards would be gone, is basically what I'm
Sometimes,
told.
yeah.
Depending on so Ken's the only one that I would trust to kind of take a look at it.
I noticed right as you said that, Ken took a sip of water.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked a little sketchy.
And I looked
here.
to the left.
Yeah, exactly. Up and to the left. That's how you know.
So I had him come in here thinking, what a gold mine. And after he spent a good, 5-6 hours here looking through everything, he said, well, the problem is, he says, you've got a lot of cards. He said, but they came from 1992 or 3 or something.
Yeah.
He said that was the era that they're pretty much worthless.
Oh, wow.
What do you call
the
those?
junk wax era?
Junk wax.
Junk wax.
Now, when we say pretty much worthless, if you go back 2 years, the boxes you have, if you could sell them for $5, it'd be a miracle. Now people are lined up to pay $40 to $50 for those boxes.
Wow.
Which is crazy. But you guys do have a lot of Vince Carter rookie cards, which was good. I pointed out there.
It's got to be something.
$60 a pop. Yeah, so you did have those.
I mean, that is kind of the intersection between our two worlds.
Right.
We would use trading cards as a way to sort of accessorize the frames that we already have. And we found out recently that there is one piece that we did for Sidney Crosby in which we had several cards. And one of those cards has actually become fairly valuable. We didn't really put two and two together. We didn't really know that when we were doing it. And I guess that's just sort of the nature of cards in general.
Yeah.
You mentioned how the industry has changed and how it had sort of a dark period.
Yes.
What is the major difference between, it seems as though what you've said, or from what I've read, your favorite era is about late 70s for cards. Is that
Late
about right?
70s, 80s, yeah.
And what is the main difference between cards from back then and cards nowadays?
Cards back then were just innocent, right? It was just OPG had terrible cardboard quality. They replaced their whatever they cut their cards with about once every 6 years. So when you go back and you see that Gretzky Rookie and it's got almost like fur hanging off the side. That's because whatever razors or blades they were using to cut with weren't sharpened. But now, I mean, Upper Deck, the technology they use is amazing. The photography is just, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, just a lot of people, and plus there's different brand, like, so Upper Deck will release their normal set, and then they'll release Upper Deck the Cop, which is $500 for a tin, basically for a pack of 5 cards.
Right.
So there's all kinds of range. Where back in the day it was just a quarter a pack.
Yeah.
Upper Deck changed the game when they came around in 1990, but just the technology that's used, the photography is amazing. Some of the cards I love from when I was a kid that I still have today is just the worst photos you could imagine.
Yeah.
It's just like there's a Dave Farish card when he played for the Leafs, and it's just like half of his face just sticking out beyond the sanction, and that's his card. It's just awesome, and that wouldn't float today. But those are the ones I love. But what Upper Deck does with the cards, it's like what you guys do, right? Like you take it to a different level.
You introduce technology.
I was going to say, it also comes down to people buying into whatever they're putting out.
Correct.
Now, they brought out, and again, I'm not the card expert you are, but I'll get your take on this because it might lead into what's happening now in the marketplace. Sure. You've got the when people need to buy into these things, they put a little piece of jersey in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, is that jersey worth anything? It's a cut-up jersey. Matter of fact, you take a game-worn jersey, which I think, in my mind, has value because it's the jersey he wore. Sure. Now you cut it up into little tiny pieces.
Yeah, that's sacrilegious to some people.
Yeah, I had a guy come to me with a Ted Williams jersey and saying, "Hey, if I cut this up and put it into a bunch of frames," I said, I won't do that.
Right.
I said, take it somewhere else.
Right.
I'm not doing it. I could get 500 frame job out of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that jersey. It should be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
So but Upper Deck does it, and hopefully, they're not.
George
things that-
Vesna's pads were cut up by, I think it was In the Game or some company a few years ago. I know the guy that was in charge of it. He's like, I did that. I was like, what? Oh. So it's, but
But
all
if they buy into it,
then it's fine. Right.
then-
It's all
and-
personal taste. Right?
and now those cards are highly sought after collectibles, and the value is there. The autograph cards, of course, well, an autograph's an autograph,
Sure.
but little pieces. I mean, Frameworth took the nets from hockey games, cut them into pieces, and put them into frames.
Sure.
So that net would have been used and thrown away. So at least we preserved it, and you got a little piece of that. So we kind of participate in it. There's certain things I will and won't do, but that leads into, like, if people believe in it, then it's worth it.
Right.
But they got to continue to believe.
Right. Well, that's the thing with cards too, is right. Some people just want to collect a base set. Some people want to collect just jersey cards. Some people want to collect just autograph cards. So it has branched out. So I guess you're bringing more people into the pool, which is smart business. Yeah. But for me, I mean, if it's some guy's jersey card, that doesn't really float my boat, right? But for my neighbor, maybe that's his thing.
Seems like you're a bit more of a purist.
I'm
in
a
that
purist.
sense.
I'm a romantic. Absolutely.
Can you tell the story of what I found to be one of the most interesting mix-ups or mess-ups in the 70s of cards of Terry Crisp? People who know you or
Crispy,
followed
yeah.
you, yeah.
That was a beauty, yeah. So Crispy's an awesome guy, right? Coach in the 1989 Stanley Cup champion Calgary Flames, a Broad Street bully, awesome broadcaster with Nashville, just a wicked dude. And if you know what Terry Crisp looks like, he probably was 5'10" back in the
5'10".
day when he played.
Yep.
Kind of a solid guy, left-handed shot. And his 75-76 O-Pee-Chee ended up with Don Selesky on his card. And Don Selesky, Crispy gave you the story, they call him Big Bird, right? Just like Larry Robinson, big, tall drink of water. And I mean, back in the day, again, that's going back to how innocent it was. If the photographer is in Washington and he takes a picture of Don Selesky and he thinks it's Terry Crisp, he just writes down Terry Crisp, it goes in the file, it goes to everybody. So Don Selesky's on Terry Crisp's card. And another favorite of mine is our buddy Steve Ludzik and Steve Larmer. Their rookie cards are mixed up. So Larmer's on the Ludzik card and Ludzik's on the Larmer card, or the other way around, depending on how you look at it. It's like Finkel is Einhorn, Einhorn is Finkel.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You don't really know. So so Ludzik and Larmer are best buddies. They're in New Brunswick together, playing junior in Moncton. And this is a story Ludzik tells me about this. He's like, you know what? It shouldn't have surprised us that our cards got mixed up. Same initials, and they're rooming together in Moncton. And so every Sunday night they'd go and do their laundry together. And their thing was they were getting a little annoyed because they were mixing their underwear up and their stuff like that. So they go, let's initial it. So they both initial it SL and chuck it in the laundry. And then halfway through the cycle, they kind of go, hey, you're SL, I'm SL. So that didn't work. But their rookie cards are mixed up. And it's just, that's a cool thing. Like, Ludsy and Larmer, there's from, God bless Luds, we love him. He's going through some tough times, and he's such great sense of humor, and they're linked by that rookie.
But let me
card
ask you
forever.
this: I just quickly, how does that affect the value of the cards?
That's a great
It's like
question.
a stamp that's wrongly minted, and
Right. If they find it and change it, and there's a short supply of the error will be worth more.
Yeah.
If they don't find it, it is what it is.
Yeah, I remember way back, Dad had given me the collection of your dad's stamps after he passed away. So it's interesting you bring up stamps. And I remember going through them to try to see if I could find any value. And there was one very specific stamp, which I located online and found out it was worth like $50,000, except the valuable ones are the ones where there's a slight printing error on it. The one I had was just a regular print run, and it was therefore
where is that stamp collection?
I sold it to Ken, actually. Ken helped me go through and sell it. He said there wasn't much of value in there, so I don't know if that's...
I know
to
where it
mail
is.
my
I've
letters.
got it.
Yeah, there you go.
So air cards they're kind of fun, and there's the airbrush cards too, where guys that get traded, they paste the guy's head on another guy's body. I love those.
That's amazing.
That doesn't happen anymore, right? We have technology now, but I like that stuff from back in the
It
day.
also kind of captures sort of we mentioned bygone era as well, but you have someone like Henry Bouchot wearing a headband in his...
yeah, he's got the headband for the Kansas City Scouts back in the day, the mustaches from back in the day. I love,
I'm
The
surprised
different
you don't.
helmets, man. Different helmets from back in the day.
You don't try to rock the mustache. I feel like that's something you should bring back.
I've had it before, but it's not convincing.
It's not convincing. Yeah.
I look like I should be, operating the tilt-a-whirl when I have a mustache.
You guys have both mentioned already at one point one specific card, and I feel like anyone who knows nothing about hockey cards knows about the Wayne Gretzky rookie card. Can you tell us how you ended up marking yours with a marker by mistake and why it's now no longer valuable?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, the one card I wanted was the Wayne Gretzky rookie card. But it's funny, when I was a young collector, you'd never see them.
Yeah.
You'd never see them. And I assume it's because everybody was hoarding them, right?
yeah.
Like, you'd go to a show with 200 tables and you would not see a Wayne Gretzky rookie card.
Wow.
And it was, and now you go to a show and they're everywhere. Right?
At this point, would collectors have known it was going to be?
It was worth like $1,000.
Okay, even back then.
In
Okay.
1989 and 1990, it was worth $1,000, but you'd never see it. Maybe 800. It used to say in the guide. But so when I was a kid, I wanted the Wayne Gretzky rookie card. Wayne's my favorite player. I tried to be just like Wayne, and Mom still says, "Always be humble and kind, just like Wayne Gretzky."
There you go. I like that.
Yeah, and it's true. And so Mom had gone to an auction in a town called Westville in Pictou County.
Pictou County.
Yeah, which is 15 minutes from Pictou, and we'd fight guys from Westville. And
It's really
she
Sharks versus
yeah,
Jets.
exactly. And she came back with this box. She said she got it for $10. It was a box of cards, and Mom is still my biggest supporter with collecting. She knows I love my cards. So my brother and I start looking through it, and we're like, "Oh my God, it's the blue cards," which is the 79-80 set. Like, do you think there's a Gretzky rookie in here? My brother and I are going through them. Oh, there it is. Halfway through, my brother and I start hugging. We're freaking out.
Oh my God.
And then we're like, boom. We're Domi and Probert. We just dropped, when Domi and Probert, we just look at each other and we start fighting. We didn't say a word, but we just started fighting. And we're fighting over that card because there's only one. And we're just beating the hell at each other. Mom's about where Brian is, stop. So we stop like this. Mom was like, Swede Knox, the linesman. She's like, share it. And we're like, I guess we could. And we just stopped fighting. So we put it in a case and we're looking at it. We're so excited. And for some reason, whoever had owned it previous to us, it just marked it a little bit with a marker on the Oilers logo. So that, of course, affects the value of it. But to be honest, we didn't care. It was our card. And so my brother and I like to say we share custody of the Gretzky rookie. It lives at my house.
Okay.
Peter visits every couple of weeks. He gets to see it. And it's something and the reason I love the card so much is it's my favorite player, right? My all-time favorite player. So it links me to my mom, who somehow bought this box for me and always supported my collecting, and it links me to my brother, and it's got the story behind it. And if I needed $1,500, I could sell it, but I'd much rather have it. And that's kind of what collecting to me is all about. It's like having something that you prize. The episode you guys had Daryl on, you guys were talking about how people just want a piece of that 10-point night.
Yeah.
And that, to me, as a kid, I mean, my Wayne Gretzky memories are immense. The 87 Canada Cup, the 84 Canada Cup, the Oilers winning those cups, meeting him in 1985 after an Oilers exhibition game against the Buffalo Sabres in Halifax at an event sponsored by Moosehead Breweries. And my brother and I were the only ones in it, running around like a couple of madmen. And everyone's going, who are these two kids? And all the Oilers thought it was great. So that's why the Gretzky card to me
Ties all the memories.
Right, it's all the memories. And it's funny, like my mom's like, your Gretzky card's worth $1 million. Like, Mom, it's not. The Gretzky card that was graded PSA 10 is the one that sold for the crazy price.
When you go through that PSA, so I understand that was a bit of a mistake too. Is that card actually still a 10? Or was that
here's the thing. It was graded a 10. But
we're talking about the card that sold for what, 200 and...
What, at 450?
Yeah.
So it was graded a 10. Apparently in other ones we graded a 10. So this is where things get a little dicey in the collecting world. It used to be if the three of us were debating the grade of a card, we'd look at it and we'd say, you know what, that's a V, that's very good to excellent. And I'd say, no, that's just very good. Mm-hmm. And Mikey, you'd say, no, that's excellent.
Right.
So we'd bicker, and then maybe we'd come to an agreement and we'd agree on a price.
We'd fight like two Reid brothers over a Gretzky card.
Like two Reid brothers, exactly. So then the grading companies come out and PSA says, well, we'll be an independent grader and we'll grade it a 5. And then say, okay, it's a 5. So then there's a Gretzky graded at 10, and I look at it and I'm like, I've seen better Gretzkys than that. I once upon a time had a PSA 8 Gretzky, and like there's better Gretzkys than that. And so now having it in the case isn't enough for some guys. They're like, well, that's a 7, but it's got the eye appeal of a 6. Well, that's a strong 7 because it's got the eye appeal of an 8. And I'm like, oh, for God's sakes! Like we've just hired somebody, paid them money to grade this, and now we're going to argue over their decision. That's like Judge Wapner saying, okay, you owe me, this is the decision, and then us going out and debating, well, the decision is the decision.
Right.
But because it's not legally binding and there's no court over it,
There's still subjectivity there.
It's still subjectivity, right?
Now, I like, though, we were kind of getting into something that I did want to touch on a little bit, and that is the sentimentality of collecting. For you, it's trading cards. For a lot of people, it's autographs, it's memorabilia in general. For me, video games, comic books, things like that. I know you had sort of gone on the record and talked about how trading cards had actually gotten you through kind of a rough point in your life around 15 years old. And I don't know how much you're willing to get into it. It's a fascinating article. You go into detail about the struggles you've had with depression and anxiety. And it's, for those of you who think it's a weird thing to bring up right now, I caution you against thinking that, because the whole point is that in these things that some people may dismiss, there comes the ability to really see yourself through a dark period. And is that, to you, is that just trading cards? Is there anything else that you think has that overwhelming sentimentality and a sense of something bigger that can get you through those?
Well, I mean, for a lot of people, if they're going through a struggle, they might like to go for a walk or they like to read. For me as a kid, I was just painfully shy. I know that might be hard for people to understand. You guys have seen me get up and do my MC thing. But I was painfully shy, and my buddies would go out on Friday nights and they'd go out on Saturday nights, and I was 15, 16, and I'd go up in my room and I'd start digging through my cards and sorting my cards, and they were just a way for me to probably to distract myself from what was really going on in my brain. It would take my mind off things. It would kind of just relax me. And it's funny too, because I find if I go through my cards now, it just relaxes me. Like, you know what? It's not medically prescribed, but it works for me.
Almost like a mantra, like a meditation mantra.
Like my yoga. I have done yoga, but now I got whatever. I won't get into it. I like it, but I'm not flexible. Some people read, some people walk, some people play sports. I find my cards very relaxing. So that's probably why I also like them. That they just make me feel relaxed. They're associated with the game I love. So I had bad anxiety, depression for a lot of years. I treat it now, which is great. And I feel excellent now. I feel better than I ever felt in my life. But the cards were kind of there for me, right? Cardboard doesn't talk back, so that was a good thing.
I think a lot of people appreciate you being open about that as well, especially those who find some sort of solace in something similar and often get sort of shooed away.
And you know what's funny too is now during the pandemic, and cards have just boomed in the last year. They've come back like crazy in a pandemic. So we're going in this pandemic, and I think, man, all my cards they're gonna just shoot down in value. And I'm not always in it for the value, but hey, let's be honest. When stuff's worth something, you want it to be worth something.
Of course.
And cards have just gone through the roof. And I think because pandemic, so everybody digs through their closets, they want to see what they got, and maybe they get the buck back. But also, I mean, you have to do something. Your discretionary income has to go somewhere. So you go cards, you go memorabilia. It's a link to the game we love that was put off for a while. So there's all kinds of stuff out there. So
the memorabilia business, card business in general, through this pandemic has gone through the roof.
Did you expect that going into this? Did you think
I was just trying to survive?
Right.
And what we found was at the beginning of it, we were selling off whatever. We had a lot of inventory, stuff that we could never move. So we just said, okay, whatever we can sell and keep the place open.
Sure.
And there was only 5 of us working at the beginning. And then as time went on, we just realized the demand was there, and we could get better pricing than cost, and little better than wholesale, and all of a sudden Sydney's prices have gone through the roof. Wayne Gretzky's prices, Upper Deck, I think, bumped their prices by 30% in one fell swoop. Thereabouts anyways. I mean, his prices have gone through the roof. So all the big name guys, and then of course we've got NFTs and all that stuff, which we can talk about too. But I think it's the same thing. You got to find something to do. I buried myself in here.
Right.
And literally have not taken very many days off since October.
Well, I had fun that day coming over and looking through your stuff. Like, to me, that's fun, right? That's like going through, and I think that's what a lot of people have been doing.
Right.
An excuse. I mean, one thing we all had in common, or most of us had in common during the pandemic, was more time on our hands. And, time to go back to the things like the hobbies that we had, like playing cards and going through them. We have spoken a lot about the sentimentality of trading cards and what that means to you, how you're more about the overall look and feel and essentially the tangibility of a card. You, Dad, just mentioned NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Now, Ken, are you familiar with this trend that's going on? Because I think there's a direct relation to trading cards.
Totally understand the Top Shot thing.
Yes.
Get it. The NHL has to get on that. Brian, you and I were saying before, to me, the amazing thing is, and we talked about this on Tim and Friends on Sportsnet, that when the NBA sells it and the Players Association, if they're on it, they get 5% of every time it sells, which is amazing to me, because when you buy a pack of cards, the league and the PA get their 13% or whatever off the $1 sale of the pack, and that's history.
Right.
But it's in this bank, and every time it sells, the NBA gets a chunk, which is just a brilliant business plan. Look, if people can collect whatever the hell they want. I'm probably not going to line up to buy one because it just doesn't do it for me, but for a lot of people it will, and I don't know, the possibilities to me seem pretty wild.
The more and more people, so Mikey, you're much more in tune with that world than I am. I'm an old school guy. So,
and I am.
And to me, it's art you can't hang on the wall. And it's, as some article I've read, I'm trying to understand it more. There is something to it, and it's more of I think really, if you believe it, it's worth it.
Well,
and the more people believe it,
the more value it has, like anything, like any currency, really. But before we get into sort of our thoughts on it, just for the listener, in case the listener hasn't heard of NFTs and isn't sure what they are, as I mentioned, it's called non-fungible token, which is the sexiest word we've ever been able to apply to any new piece of technology. There's a very important distinction, though. The NFT itself is essentially a code that you can use to track the uniqueness of an item. So Top Shot, as you mentioned, Ken, is essentially a digital trading card, is what they're trying to mimic. That itself is not the NFT. The NFT is the technology behind that card, which makes it unique. So there's a lot of possibility here. My fear in the world of NFTs is that we're looking to parallel to what trading cards are. So right now it's essentially like a GIF or a video of a player doing something that you could find anywhere online, and it's unique to you because you own essentially the blockchain recognition.
The code, like 001, it's
right,
002.
So for those of you who know Bitcoin, it's a very similar, and cryptocurrency in general, it's a very similar premise where you have a constantly functioning ledger that's being run by all of these different computers, by everyone who's taking part in it, that's constantly checking so that there's no way to fake where one of these elements of code have gone. So it's and it's not centralized.
It's not centralized?
It's not centralized.
Okay.
So basically you have these people out there who are running their computers constantly to essentially check, double check, triple check, run everything to make sure that all the transactions are being accounted for. So no one person can really change anything. So once you've introduced this token, the token being that line of code that can sort of track and determine what the uniqueness of items.
So I could introduce an NFT of me going like this to the world?
You literally could. There you go. There, Ken's looking in the camera for those of you who
What's
aren't on
that going to be
YouTube.
worth? Like a dime?
Well, I mean, it's here's what a lot of people, there is so much buzz about this because it's almost as though the gold rush is something that everyone can take part in without having to go to San Francisco.
Right.
You just have to log in online. So everyone is thinking this is my shot. So the New York Times wrote an article about NFTs, then created a picture of that article, put it into the blockchain and sold it. I want you guys to guess what you think that article sold for.
$1,000.
Higher.
15.
Higher.
20,000.
Higher.
How long are we going to
You guys got to go
$100,000.
$740,000.
Are you
Now,
kidding?
So stop here for a sec, Mikey, because I'm trying to understand this. So this chain is just, I can introduce anything to it?
So it runs on a platform.
So if I introduce an NFT, and I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
Of like, I don't know, the three of us just going like this.
Yeah.
And we put it out there. Someone can buy it for whatever.
Right, and own that.
Who gets the money, though, when they pay it? I get it?
You would get it.
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's fucking go. Let's do this.
Except for whoever's buying it has to believe that it's worth something.
Right.
But if they buy it, their money's poof.
They're gone. You got it.
Now he's hoping to resell it to some other dude.
Or just hope, or hang on to it. You got to keep in mind, this is right now a market. Everyone thinks that they're going to screw someone over and get a bunch of money, but this is a market right now for people with a ton of expendable income, just like the art world is a market for people with a ton of expendable income. If you own a Warhol, a unique, an original Warhol, that's in a warehouse somewhere. It's very rare that that's hanging on your wall. So the argument of these things need to be physical, otherwise I don't want them, is not something that applies to most people who are spending this much money on them.
That's what you're telling to Brian and I, because we're like, okay, I got this, I can put it on my
Well,
wall.
so we are exploring as a company,
Yeah.
NFTs right now for our players and for products that we create as, so I think in general, when you say us putting our thumbs up, well, people don't get that as clearly. You can make that worth something. There's little kitty cats that are out in the marketplace that some company created that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just an image of a cat. And there's different kinds of cats, and you can breed the cats. I don't know how that all
But
works.
what it boils down to is perceived value. It's
like
any
anything.
faith, like anything.
A card is literally a piece of card.
And that's why I wanted to bring this up, is because there is this argument that NFTs, or the products that they represent, because an NFT itself would be essentially the certificate of authenticity that you cannot forge. So it's very valuable. But the item that it represents, whether it's an image online, whether it's a kitty cat, is the thing that people have to have faith in having a value. So I can go online and look at a picture of a Wayne Gretzky rookie card. Yes. But that rookie card itself is what gives it its value. Owning it is what gives it its value.
You know what? When you put it that way, you're absolutely correct, because a card is literally a piece of card.
That's it.
So what is the value is whatever we perceive it to be.
Whatever we say it is.
Sounds exactly
So that's
like
how
NFT.
you get into understanding what
That's
it
a great
is.
way to put it.
But it's still something that every time I talk to somebody that's talking about this, they say, I don't get it, but
Want to make
this
some
is
money off it.
right.
So when you put this, is it NFT.com? How do I put it
No,
up
so
there?
it runs on a platform. So as far as cryptocurrencies and blockchain go, Bitcoin is the one that a lot of people know. A lot of people know Dogecoin because it's kind of a joke that Elon Musk has now pumped up and it's actually getting a lot of value. But there's another platform or system called Ethereum, and that's what most of these NFTs are running on. Requires a lot of computing power.
Ethereum? Wasn't that an album Def Leppard put out in 87? No, that was Hysteria.
No, that is the soundtrack actually to NFTs.
No.
Yeah, it plays in the background. No, of course not.
I'm really into NFTs now. I love my Def Leppard.
I know NFTs off by heart, front to back. So what it comes down to is it running on this platform Ethereum, but you can sort of tap into that. Like imagine it like this. Anyone can create a piece of art. I can draw on a napkin and create a piece of art. Okay. But you can put it out in the marketplace now, and it's all being tracked.
But how do I put? My question is, how do I put it out there? Do I log on to something?
Yeah. So there are a few processes in order to get your NFT essentially recognized by the blockchain on Ethereum. There are websites that'll do that for you. You can design a whole video, image, whatever, and then to sort of put it in simplest terms, you register it with, on that Ethereum platform, and now it exists as something that's trackable and traceable. And it's a relatively easy thing
I was
to
going to
do.
say, is it simple as click, or it has to be approved by the NFT
No,
board?
there's no one who can approve it because it's
So
not
I
centralized.
could take my child's art
Yes.
and make an NFT on it?
You can make an NFT on it, and this is what interests people: is if I'm Picasso, which
Yes.
a lot of people think I am.
Sure you
it's,
are,
It's
yes.
bizarre, yeah. Must be something to do with the ears. I'm not sure. If I'm
That was
That was Van Gogh.
well, I said ears plural, so Picasso.
Sure.
Let's move past it. But if essentially I can, if I'm creating a great piece of art and I sell it to someone, that's the end of my relationship to that piece of art, right? As the artist. But as you mentioned, Ken, if you have ownership over the NFT or you've created it, you can build in a royalty for yourself so that every time it sells, you get
Top
something.
Shot.
The one thing that very few people are talking about right now, unless it's happening internally over at Getty Images. Getty Images, for the listener who's not aware, is essentially a database of images. And if you use them as a licensee of Getty, you essentially have to pay royalties for every image you use. Now, if they can track digitally who is using that, I don't have to report to them that I've used it in an item from Frameworth. It's automatically being used. So NFTs are a concept that actually fills a hole that exists now, regardless of whether or not you like digital cats. There's a solution here to codify and make unique and traceable anything.
Now,
Physical or
timely.
otherwise.
It's timely because I believe today is when Austin Matthews NFTs.
Right.
So here's the issue that I'm dealing with right now with my athletes that I work with is the criticism that you get. So you either believe in this stuff and are progressive and understand it, or try to understand it and approve of it as a new type of commerce. But so those people are very positive. But I was watching some of the tweets that are going about this stuff, and there's a lot of very positive ones, but there's a lot of very negative ones. This is a cash grab. What the hell is he doing?
But people also opposed to a paid. There's people that say I don't support a paid autograph sign.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
So you can never make everybody happy, and so what I want to do is
as a broadcaster, I get you on that one.
So I want to make it. So if we get into this venture with some of our guys, we want to make sure that it's in the most positive light.
Yeah.
So we'll explore that. And I do want to leave some time to talk about Eddie's book. So, but let's finish up here.
Sure. Yeah. We
Imagine trying to explain an NFT to Eddie.
Oh,
What a beauty.
well, I mean, that's an interesting thing, is because, purely or exactly because of what we talked about, which is NFTs or the digital assets live and die off of our perception of their value. A lot of these companies are going to older hockey players, current hockey players, because every person that they get to sort of co-sign it lends legitimacy to it.
Sure.
Purely by their association. We had Daryl Sittler, and he was talking about the potential of doing something with his game-worn Canada Cup jersey and associating
76, the goal. Man.
Yeah, associating an
Well,
NFT
here's the
with
problem with that I just noticed when I looked at Matthews offering the NFT. It had no NHL marks on it, and so the NBA, I think, has signed on to this so they can use the marks. But it was very obvious to me, as somebody that's a licensee of the NHL and the PA and all that the marks were not on the image that I saw, and that's obviously due to legal issues.
But if Austin does it that way, then that
Still
the
NFT.
value, the value is his, and he doesn't have to pay to the
He doesn't
league
have to participate.
Now, the way to explain that to people who aren't fully aware of how the licensing might work on that, there is the NHLPA license, the Players Association, and the NHL League license. With the league license, you have the right to use images like the logos on a jersey, the arenas, et cetera, et cetera. With the Players Association license, you can use the likeness of the players themselves. If you don't have the League Association license, you can't, for example, show a player in a jersey, which is why in a lot of these generic commercials that you watch with a hockey player, they'll have the colors of their NHL team, but not the logo, because that's a no-no unless you're paying royalties to the NHL. And that's just to sort of separate that difference there.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit. We don't know when you'll be back, and I'd love to have you on every episode if we could, but I do want to make sure that we touch on the project that we most recently worked together on, which you wrote, which was Eddie Shack's book. And that book was a project that was ongoing for almost like a full year, getting the stories.
It was pretty quick, though.
It was, well, listen.
Faster than a speeding
The
bullet.
listener doesn't know this, but my dad will enter into any industry, and if he wants something done, he wants it done quicker than the best of those industries can get
fast.
it done. It was very fast.
Yeah, your dad called me, and Brian, you said, how about we do an Eddie Shack book? I said, sure, let's look into it. And when do you need it by? And I think you called me.
I said for Christmas.
For Christmas. And I think you called me in around April or May. And
Right.
I said, well, I'm working on a different book, and that's insane. And you said, well, let's rock and roll.
Well, no, actually what you said was, okay, so this was, I think, 2019.
Yeah.
And Christmas would have been 2019.
Yeah, Christmas
So you said,
2019, yeah.
Christmas 2020. And I said, no, this Christmas. And you said, what?
Yeah.
I said, look, you never know what's going to happen. And of course,
Yeah.
that leads
That's
into
fair,
the
yeah.
story. It was fortuitous. We mentioned it first. That we did it at the time. You were amazing putting that together, but it was a work of passion, right?
It was a work of passion. We didn't become millionaires, but what I think the next book should be the book about doing the book with Eddie, because like for me, and I've said this to you, it was a treat to hang out with Eddie and get to know Eddie. And man, you talk about a guy that just was his own man. And I think about how I get emails or tweets all the time. Oh, I'm offended by this. Eddie wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, and it was a fast book to put together. I'm still trying to find an Eddie Shack rookie card. I got Brad Hartland down in Halifax looking for one for me. But to do a book with Eddie Shack, to do it that quickly, to hang out with him, was absolutely amazing. And the way the book turned out wasn't our plan going in. Our plan going in was a 60,000 to 80,000 word book, just your generic hockey book. And pictures meant so much to Eddie. I can see why he liked hanging out here, because there's pictures everywhere.
Yeah.
There's pictures in his garage. And as we started to go into it, I remember us talking, we have to have pictures in this, and then it evolved into what it was.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Richard McQuarkle and
yeah.
even Sandra here did a great job putting that the whole thing together. It's kind of a combination between a coffee table book and a great story.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I initially got the idea was Eddie used to come in here virtually every day.
Yeah.
He'd stir up shit. He'd be in here for, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. He'd see everybody in the place, start talking to everybody. We call him Mr. HR Violation. Whatever he came to his mind, he'd say in front of whoever it was. And in this day and age, that's pretty tough to get by. But nobody would complain. And I went around, made sure everybody was okay with the language he used and that, because we'd have a problem if he wasn't. Everybody gave me the okay. And then he said, he'd just come into my office and start telling stories. And I said, you got to get these down in a book. And that's when I made the call to Ken. I said, somebody's got to write these. And it's not going to be me.
Yeah.
And then we put that book together in about 4 or 5 months. But
Fast, man.
we went on tour.
Because I was going to ask, what was more enjoyable, writing it or touring with Eddie afterwards to various places across Canada?
Well, for me,
Yeah, for you.
because Ken, the one big day that we had, we did about 6 or 7 stops, and Ken was with us for breakfast television at the beginning and all that.
fun.
But I was at the end of the day with him,
Right,
and
right.
I'll let Ken get into some of the stops, but I was at the end of the day after a full day and ending up signing autographs at the hockey game,
Right.
Yeah.
and in one of the stores there, and then at the players lounge and a few pops with him, and I'm driving him home, and it's 10 o'clock at night. So now it's been like a 14-hour day.
Wow.
And he says, come on in for a glass of wine. I can't keep my eyes open, and Eddie's come on in for a glass of wine. But remember that day.
And keep in mind, this is, I'm sure this is knowledge at this point, but at this point he had already received a cancer diagnosis. So he's,
No.
This is prior to that?
We mid-January?
Yeah. It
think-
was right after Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Regardless, to have that much energy at that.
But, man, he would say stuff at book signings when people walk in that I won't repeat here, that if I did, I'd be handcuffed. And I was just, and people loved it. I always say the beautiful thing about Eddie was when people met Eddie, he knew that they didn't want to meet Ed. They wanted to meet Eddie Shack.
The entertainer.
And if it was 30 seconds or 2 minutes or 30 minutes, he gave them the Eddie Shack
All
experience.
the time.
It was
Kissing
awesome.
babies. The language that would come
Oh,
out.
it's gorgeous. I loved it.
But I'll tell you what, this cancel culture wouldn't go by.
No.
Eddie is the anti-cancel culture. He would be completely opposite. The cancel culture would have such a hard time existing. If
Well, he wouldn't care, first off.
He'd be Teflon to it.
And like, what would he say? Don't behave yourself, be yourself.
Right.
And I love that. I love that. It was old school. And for me, the most fun was literally sitting here doing stories and then sitting in his garage at his house doing stories.
Where he had 23 photos of
23
himself.
photos, and he loved it. And we'd be wrapping up. He'd say, "You want a glass of wine?" I'd say, "No, I got to go to work tonight." And you'd go in his house, and there was one puck on the wall. I remember I go, "What's that puck there?" He goes, "Well, I don't know what the hell that is." So I told him it's his 200th whatever goal with the Buffalo Sabres. And then you go up into his house, and I met his wife, Norma, and she's this quiet, lady, like a lady. Like,
Yes.
And Eddie's got one of his, he's got some weird piece in his house that he bought at an auction for $25,000 when he was half corked, and like just awesome stories. And everything, I don't know what it was, but if Eddie was in a world with NFTs, he'd buy half the NFTs drunk, and then he'd cash in on them. Like everything he bought half snapped at an auction, he made money on.
For a guy who self-professed couldn't read, he found many ways to make much money.
Eddie might not understand NFTs, and he'd tell you that they're a joke or whatever. He'd make money off them.
He'd make money off. And you know what? The one thing I always thought it going in, because I've encountered people in my life that have been illiterate, but one thing I learned from Eddie is you don't have to know how to read to be brilliant. And Eddie was a brilliant guy in his own way.
Really was.
Like
never
Jack
put anything by him.
Jack Valacat said in the book, Eddie couldn't read or write, but he could count 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. And Phil Esposito used to say, we'd be the Boston Bruins, we'd be on the bus, and Eddie couldn't read, but he'd be reading the stocks in the newspaper. So, something was a little amiss there.
I'll tell you what, if you haven't read the book, and the book is a bestseller.
Is it?
Out
Good.
of the trunk of our car, basically.
Yeah, we did it old school.
Indigo took them on, but it was too late to put in most stores.
Yeah.
Amazon had them. But Eddie and I went from place to place, and we'd go from store to store, and we'd sell them, and he'd sign all the books.
And what a beautiful signature.
Oh.
And the perfect, that silver pen looks so good on the blue background, doesn't it, in the book?
As a matter of fact, I just thought of something. You know what? So some of the people listening today, we're going to run a contest for this anyways. Mikey will announce it a little later, but I think today we'll give away, let's give away 5 books, signed books. I have some signed by you too, Ken, writer. And we'll give away 5 books, and just go to frameworth.com and we'll post it in the next few days of how you can win it. You just really have to make it known that we'll ask a question that came from this thing.
I love it. Yeah, you can find us on Twitter. You'll get the tag and everything after this, but it's at Frameworth Sport, and we'll announce the details of that giveaway.
You know what's so cool about the book too is so many people. You mentioned Richard. So many people made it happen because the writing part was 1/10 of what went into it because it's funny, I've written a bunch of books, and this is the only one I did that's this style. It's funny, we've been talking about art. That book is a piece of art. If you just put it up on your shelf, it looks
well, the other thing too is how many people wanted to contribute. So
Yes.
the funny thing was, Eddie would tell a story, and then you would talk to Norma after, his wife, and she'd contradict it, or she'd set that this is what Norma's thoughts were.
Norma says.
What was really cool was I phoned Wayne Gretzky. He wanted to write a little story about his thing. Phil Esposito. You just go through all the people that contributed, including
Bobby Hall.
Bobby Hall. These guys were all, and they all had a great story about them.
And again, for you guys, thank you, because I'm driving down Eastern Avenue on my way to work, and my phone rings, and I'm, hello, is this Ken? Yep. What's up, man? Hey, it's Wayne Gretzky. I'm pulling over, and Wayne gives me this awesome story. Like literally, Wayne, like he'll talk. He's like me.
Yeah.
And it's funny, and we just talked about Eddie, and it was great, and he had so many fantastic memories of when Eddie played senior hockey, coming out to Brantford to play senior. And it's just, it's amazing. And Eddie is a guy that, thanks to the Pop Shop and thanks to Old Timers Hockey, everybody in Canada, it seems, has
They still know him.
Yeah, they still, and they know him. Yeah.
So, funny too, because Wayne was the first person to get a book. I
really?
remember
Right, you sent me
I
that
just
picture.
got them delivered. I met him down at Ritz for a drink, and Eddie had signed a book for me, and I gave it and he was the first one to open the book.
Amazing.
That's a cool stat.
That brings us full circle on your love of Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah,
Guys,
Wayne Gretzky rookie card,
we're running a little bit low on time here. Before we go, I want to ask one more question. Ken, obviously, over the course of your entire life collecting cards, there are some maybe misplacements, damaged cards. You already mentioned the marker. What is the biggest regret when it comes to your collecting, and why is it giving your Mario Lemieux rookie card to your buddy Craig?
Oh, yeah, I traded a Mario Lemieux rookie to Craig, but I've since reacquired a Mario Lemieux rookie.
Okay, there you go.
That's right. I traded that. That was a bad trade.
Do you know who you got for it?
I can't remember. It had a flimsy corner, though, so it wasn't that bad. Another one I remember selling Steve Eisenman rookies for $2 at the Pictou County Flea Market at the Highland Square Mall. That's when hockey cards started, their value was really low compared to baseball cards. So I remember selling an Eisenman rookie for $2. Yeah, trading a Lemieux rookie was a regret. And you know what another regret is when you look back through your old cards, you'll have all these cards from 1979, you'll have all these cards from 1985, and you're like, how come I have 4 of this guy, but I don't have any Marios? So you never know what you're going to get in a pack, right?
Well, I'll tell you one. You hear these stories all the time. I was part of these stories because I go back to the 60s when I was collecting cards.
Bobby.
And there was Mickey Mantle cards. And our deal was you'd collect them, and at the end of the year, you'd throw them all up, your whole collection up in the schoolyard, and watch everybody beat the crap out of each other to get them. Or you'd use them for shootsies. So you'd take the card and you'd fire them against the wall, and the closest one to the wall would get the other guy's card. And if you had a leaner, that was even better because you got whatever. Or kissies, which was throwing all the cards against the wall until two of them landed on each other, and as soon as one overlapped the other, you got all the cards.
And we wonder why the corners are all
I was
big.
gonna
Putting them in the spokes of your
Yeah.
wheels
Well, I
of
always
your
find
bike.
the funniest things about cards is everybody wants them in mint condition, right? But if you find a card from 1966 that's perfect, that means
It had
in
no
my-
love.
In my mind, exactly. It was given to some kid. He bought a pack. He wasn't into hockey, and the card just went away.
Yeah.
Those of us who loved it played flipsies. We piled them up.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I guess my biggest regret, and it's not a regret because it's part of the fun of it, is just not getting enough of the guys in the packs. Like in Hockey Card Stories too, I did an interview with Wayne again. Well, he name dropped. Mr. Gretzky was kind enough to give me an interview, and he said when he was a kid, he was a big Bobby Hull fan and Gordy, and he always wanted those guys in his pack. And he said nothing against Larry Goodenough, but every pack I open, I get a Larry Goodenough, Larry Goodenough. And Larry Goodenough, by the way, one of the best nicknames in hockey history. Izzy.
Is he
good enough?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Love
amazing.
it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Awesome stories. Obviously, if you like this conversation today, Hockey Card Story 1 and 2 are out now. I think they have audiobooks as well. I think I saw.
Good Lord, I'm never recording an audio book again. I did that for the first Hockey Card Stories book. You talk about a process. Holy
I bet.
smokes. Yeah,
I can barely read a
You
book.
have
I'm
to
looking at that.
enunciate. You think for a broadcaster that'd be easy, but you guys know me. I'm not a broadcaster. I'm just some dude who talks, right?
Obviously, we also have another book which I would be fascinated to read. It's One Night Only Conversations with the NHL's One Game Wonders.
That was a fun one,
That
yeah.
seems like you'd have a ton of interesting stories. It's like YouTube fodder with like the top 10 people who have played one great, that sort of thing.
That was fun. Talking to guys who have played one game. I did another book called One to Remember on guys who scored a single goal.
Nice.
So, by doing those books, you can see where my love of the common hockey
For
card comes
sure,
from.
for
Because
sure.
there's no such thing as a common card because everybody has a story. That's what the books did. That's what Eddie's book did, man. You talk about stories, and I love looking at Eddie's old cards because it's a total journey from his crew cut rookie card with the Rangers.
Yeah.
Then you get into the 70s, he's with LA, and then you get the older Leafs cards, and it's
The mustache.
the mustache and the big hair and.
Well, you know what? We're gonna have to do this again.
I'd love
I
to,
would love
yeah.
to get Ken back.
I want an NFT of the Plager brothers chasing.
That would be good. Or him jumping on the back of whatever.
Right.
Forget that. I know we got to go. Ken, thank you for coming.
Thanks,
I
guys.
know that I'm going to tell you this. I've got a few new book ideas. There won't be anybody like exactly like Eddie, but there's some great stories. People want to hear what happens behind the scenes. That's what made that book so successful.
Right. And that's the nature of this podcast. Before we go, Ken, any plugs that you want to throw out there?
Just catch me on Sportsnet Central every night with Mark Osmack, Monday through Wednesday at 10 Eastern. We're only doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday now because of the pandemic, so we have to go in and do all the shifts.
Oh, wow.
Usually Ivanka and I go in Monday to Friday and we do the 10 Eastern show, but because of the pandemic, we're only allowed so many people in the building, so,
You do them all.
big 3-day work week.
Ooh.
And pucks in deep. There you go. There you get that in there.
Perfect. All right. So for Ken Reid, Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth, and myself, Mikey Aaronworth,
You can say Dad.
we can say Dad himself. We are signing off. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport or Instagram at Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram at Aaronworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions. Executive producers Mikey Aaronworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Aaronworth signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it.